What if I told you that you are proactive, but you're not productive? There is a difference between clarity and noise, and many of us are proactive in noise, right, but not productive in clarity. Many of us have a purpose, but we don't have goals to achieve those purposes. Many of us have a direction, right, but sometimes we get moved from left to right, and then we end up asking ourselves, how did we get in this position, and why haven't I achieved the goal I set out to achieve in the beginning of the year? The reason is because you're proactive, right? You're actively trying to change your life. You're working the jobs, you're spending the time, you're doing the hours, right? But it always feels like you're just chasing something that is not coming to pass. But there's a difference between being productive and being proactive. Productivity is not a measure of what you do or how much time you work. It is simply a measure of how much you get done, and not how much low, proactive activities you get done, but high proactive activities you get done. There are certain things that we do in our lives, right? I can do an hour of work that will change the trajectory of my life. So what makes the difference between, that 1 hour of work that fundamentally changes the course of my life versus those hours and hours of work that I've been doing, but they don't seem to amount to anything? Every single time you do something in your life, you take an action, whether it is in your job or in your relationships, you have to be having these, sort of points, an end point that you can see, right? Sometimes we argue with our friends, right? And we say things that we can never take back. Why? Because we were not thinking about the end point. We were thinking about being proactive, reactive, right? But we weren't thinking about, is this a productive thing to say? Is it productive for us to be arguing? Is it productive for us to allow ourselves to get to this stage of the argument? Probably not, right? So we were proactive, right? When we were arguing, we had the intention of solving the problem, but then we stopped being friends. Why? Because we were not productive. Why? Because yes, it's nice to react and say what we want when we want. It's nice to wake up when we want, right? And it's nice to, pick the easier job. It's nice to pick the easier relationships, right? The ones that don't require us to grow and don't require us to have commitment, right? And don't require us to be better, right? It's easier to pick those relationships, right? But is that productive? No, because it ends up putting us in the exact same place we found ourselves in the beginning, right? And then we ask ourselves and we question ourselves and we look ourselves in the mirror and we ask ourselves, why am I in the exact same place? And then we live this cycle repeating in our lives, right? Because we are proactive but we're not productive, right? So in life, right, everything is about productivity, right? It's about productivity. And recognize in productivity there's the word product. Product is the sum of, right? In mathematics, a product is something times something. You multiply 2 times 2, right? 4. 4 times 4, 16, like that. But it is multiplying itself, right? So if you're in some form of stage in your life and you are proactive but you're not being productive, you are working towards a goal but you do not see anything coming up, you don't see results, you don't see some form of fiscal reward, you don't see some form of something that is showing you or confirming to you that the work that you are doing is actually productive, then you're being proactive and you're not being productive. Do it. Do the things that scare you the most. Do the things that keep you up at night. Do the things that they bother you. Do the things that risk everything so that you can gain everything you ever wanted in your life. A lot of us are too fixated on comfort. We're too fixated on what strokes our ego. But what strokes our ego is not the same thing that allows us to be productive enough to give us what we want. And most of the time productivity is humbling. It takes a level of humility, because it means that everything that you thought had to go a certain way based off of the life patterns that you are avoiding or the truths that you are avoiding, right? None of those things are acceptable when you're a productive person. Because yes, I may not want to learn how to file my taxes, but how can I ever make more money if I don't know how to file them? It's nice to avoid the conversation of investment. It is nice to avoid the conversation of plan B, C, D, E, F. It is nice to avoid the conversation of what happens if the economy crashes. It is nice to avoid the conversation of what happens if the currency drops. It is nice to avoid the conversation of what happens if my stocks fall. At what stage in our lives do we stop living in the comfort of not having to do the things we know that we have to do to achieve the goals we know we need to achieve? At what stage do we look at ourselves and say, maybe comfort is not the solution? So do it. To be a productive person is to do the things that are the hardest things to do for you. It is to stand up and to do a presentation in front of investors, and have them say no to you and have people reject you. It is to make jokes, right? So that you can make friends by saying the worst terrible jokes, because speaking to random people, being a lot more outgoing, being a lot more extroverted, do the things that terrify you, asking people on the date, right? Entering in an investment group. And yes, there's a question of where will I get my money. There's all these worries that we feed ourselves, but worrying is not productive because it doesn't give you a product. Worrying is not productive because it doesn't give you something fiscal in it. Or does worrying, if I worried, right, will I get $1 for worrying? Will I get money for worrying? No, I won't get. So is it proactive or productive? It is proactive acting of my brain. I know that my brain is working because it worries, but it's not productive in the physical realm because nothing's happening as the more I worry, right? So do the things that make you scared, right? Do the things that you think about every night. Do the things that you've been avoiding, and start every morning with those things, because those are the things that actually move you along. There's a reason that those things scare you. There's a reason that those things give you anxiety. There's a reason that those things are so terrifying to you, because deep down you know that those things are the things that can change your life permanently, and that is scary, right? Because it is scary to take on responsibility. It is scary to be in control over your finances. It is scary to debate your own beliefs. It is scary to have believed in something your whole life and to realize that maybe that I believed in that thing because of propaganda. Maybe I believed that I couldn't have my own money. Maybe I believed that I was not fiscally able. Maybe I believed that I couldn't start this company and organization or succeed because I was indoctrinated, not because I actually believe that. Do the things that terrify you, because those are the things that will actually move you along and make you a better person. If you do the things that scare you, one thing that scares you every single week, you will not be in the same place ever again in your life. You always be moving forward, and you always be walking closer to the thing that you told yourself that you wanted. But you have to be productive in doing the things that actually move, the steps forward, not just the things that feel productive at the moment, but they're not doing anything. If I put my clothes in the washing machine for an hour, right, versus me putting it in for 15 minutes, right? If I knew I could put my clothes in for 15 minutes, why did I put it in for an hour? What am I doing? I'm lagging. I'm lagging time. I'm wasting time, right? And many of us are like that. Why do we wait for a 3-year degree to start the company, right? When we could have started it today. Who are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? We know that this is the end goal that we want, but we're too busy focusing on the stationary points. We're too busy focusing on, the peaks, and the slight rejections, rather than actually getting where we want to. And you need to be bulletproof with your goals. Why be friends with people who don't support you? Why be friends with people who don't, have the best intentions for you? Why be friends with people who don't believe in your dreams? You're just wasting time. You're putting your clothes in the washing machine for an hour when they could have just been there for 15 minutes by just making hard decisions early.